Welcome to Polar Opposites. My name is Justin Conder, and on this political podcast, first and foremost, I want you to know that it is okay to disagree with me. You're a different person with different experiences and a different background than I have. Your opinions matter, though. Nobody is 100% right or wrong on anything. I don't expect to be 100% right either. So that being said, if you do have a different opinion than I do, or if you have a different perspective on something, reach out, comment, or reach out over social media. I want to know about your perspective on these issues. Now, also that being said, I think we have a lot more in common than we realize. For instance, if you're like the majority of people, you probably find yourself fairly politically moderate, somewhere in the middle. Not quite far right Republican or far left Democrat. You're probably somewhere in the middle, looking at the issues in our country and realizing that moderate voices are getting shut out. This is frustrating. And I think that all this political extremism is really starting to hurt our country. You know, we're getting shut out more and more as time goes on, and that's frustrating. But I want to share with you why that is, and what is the solution to combat us being shut out of politics. And so the definition I've heard of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, and then expecting a different result. If you were driving in your car, and your car started to have a flat tire, and you're trying to figure out what's going on, you're probably not going to go, well, the tire could be getting flat, but I'm going to keep driving because I spend a lot of money on the tire and it's worked perfectly fine this far, so I'm not going to be worried about the tire. You know, you're going to get out of your car. You're going to replace it so that you can keep moving forward safely. I kind of have a similar view on our elections in our country. So we're right now currently with our elections currently with our election system having a flat tire politically. So it's time for us to pull over our country car and to fix it. We've been driving quite a while with this. So what exactly is wrong with our elections and how can we change them? To answer that question, I want us to back up and go back in time a little bit. I want us to go all the way back to 1776. I don't know if you know, there's this blip in history, 1776. This happens to be the year where our founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence and said, you know what? We are going to break away from Great Britain. We have had enough. We are done with them. It was basically our divorce letter to King George. So we fought for this because of taxation without representation. That's what it kind of boiled down to. They said, you know what? You have the right to tax us without us saying anything. Well, we don't really like that. We want the system to change. We want better representation. You're not giving it to us. We're going to be doing our own thing from now on. Do you know of any examples of taxation without representation in our country today? Go ahead and leave a comment if you can think of anything that resembles taxation without representation in our society. I think the key word in all of this is representation, though. That's definitely the key word because the founders didn't feel like they were being represented properly, so that's why they fought to be independent. And some of you may be thinking, well, don't our elections represent us fairly today, though? Our founding fathers, after all, they went through that entire war. They fought for the system that we have today. Isn't it good enough that we've got this good system that represents us a little bit better than back then? Don't we live in a system where the majority of people who vote for a candidate, they get their candidate elected and that's our representation? The short answer is that's not exactly the case. I'm going to show you why that is, and that there are better ways to conduct our elections than what we do today. After the Revolutionary War, our founding fathers, they had some hiccups in trying to establish our nation, and they had a lot of debate, a lot of back and forth on what they were going to do. It boiled down to they had 3 branches of government. They were all going to check each other's power to make sure that nobody's getting too much power, nobody's going to have too much influence over other people. And one of these branches of government was the legislative branch. We'll focus on the other two branches at some other point in time. There will be other podcast episodes made about the other two branches, but today we're going to focus on the legislative branch. Specifically, the founders knew it was important that the people had some sort of representation, so they set up an entire chamber within the legislative branch that is specifically designed to represent the people. And that is the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is, in theory, the part of the government that the people are in charge of. That's why we have elections every 2 years to elect congressmen and congresswomen to go back and represent us. We don't do this every 4 years or 6 years like some other offices that are held in government. We do this every 2 years. This was important so that they could be more accountable to the people, and if they started to go, in a different direction than the people wanted them to, they could easily and quickly be voted out of office. Now, since the people have such a tight grip on this group of people, this legislative branch of government, or this specific chamber known as the House of Representatives, they must have a pretty high approval rating from the people that they're representing, right? That is just absolutely wrong, first of all. The opposite is true. They are lucky if they get above a 20% approval rating at any given time. They're usually averaging quite a bit under 20%. That's just absolutely embarrassing. The people that you're supposed to be representing are so fed up with you that not even 20% of them, not even 1 in 5 people agree that you're doing a good job. If that were the case with any other job, you would be fired right on the spot, that no questions asked, if you were doing that poor of a job. So why do they average so low? It's because they're not adequately representing the people. There are a lot of reasons for this, and that they don't represent the people fairly. Issues such as gerrymandering, party primaries, PAC money, and we'll get into some of those another time. But the one thing I want to focus our attention on today is the fact that we live in a winner-takes-all system. It seems on paper that if somebody gets the most votes, that should, in theory, make them the best candidate to go out and represent people. Now, winner takes all, or sometimes people call it first past the post. Basically, it says whoever gets the most votes wins the election no matter what. Let's say that you have 3 people who are running to be your congressman. Then those 3 people, let's just say they are Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, and Chris Pratt. We're going to go on a Marvel theme here for just a second. So Chris Hemsworth, when it's all said and done, he does really well. He comes out with 40% of the vote. Let's say Chris Evans ends up getting 30% of the vote, and Chris Pratt gets 30% of the vote. So who wins? Chris Hemsworth wins because he gets 40%. That's bigger than 30% of which is what the other candidates gets. So even though 60% of the people did not even vote for Chris Hemsworth, he still gets 100% of the representation because he got the most votes. This is becoming more of a real possibility. You know, I know that a lot of people think, well, we don't live in a 3-party system. We live in a dominantly 2-party system, Republicans and Democrats. It usually doesn't come out to be quite that low. Usually people get above 50%. Look, we're living in a time with a lot of political change and a lot of third parties that are coming up and making a lot of noise in politics. This is becoming a real possibility that we could end up seeing a situation like this where somebody wins with 60% of the people not voting for them. You've got parties like the Forward Party, you've got the Green Party, the Libertarians that are starting to get a little bit more noticed because people are breaking away from Republicans and Democrats. You've got Donald Trump, who's planning on running for president, but if he doesn't get the nomination, could very well go out and form his own party, and that could end up getting a lot of support from his loyal supporters. So we can clearly see that that a winner-takes-all system going forward is probably not going to be the most ideal system to put in place for our elections. It creates a two-party system, and a two-party system is simply not good for our democracy. If you think about it, politics is not two-dimensional. It's not black and white. It's not my way or the highway. At least it shouldn't be. You can't fit all political identities and groups into two camps. It's just not possible. We live in a country with literally millions of different people, different cultures, ideas, and two parties are not going to be able to adequately represent all those people. So what's a good way for us to even address this issue? It really comes down to when we elect our House of Representatives, we need a proportional representation. A system of proportional representation, what is that exactly? So let me give you an example. So in the previous example, winner takes all, we had the Chris example with Hemsworth winning. In this example, it's going to be people voting on a political party instead of voting for a specific candidate. So let's say that we have three parties running, okay? So these are going to be the okay party, the all right party, and the party, okay? So the okay party, they have okay policies, and the all right party has an all right agenda. And the party, they might not be your favorite, but there's people who are really going to support them and who want to be represented. So when it's all said and done, let's say for the sake of argument that there's 100 seats up for grabs in Congress. I know that's not the case in real life. I know there's a lot more. But just for the sake of argument, to make our math easy. So let's say for the sake of argument that the okay party gets 40% of the people voting for them. So what does that mean for representation? That means that the okay party would get to fill in 40 seats in the House of Representatives. If the all right party got another 40%, how many seats would they get? They would get 40 seats. If they had gotten 39%, they would have had 39 seats. If they had gotten 41%, they would have gotten 41 seats. But they got 40%. That means that the remaining 20% went to the party. And the party got 20 seats from their 20%. It seems pretty straightforward, based off of how many people voted for a specific party, that party is going to get representation in Congress for that. So proportional representation ensures that every vote actually counts towards representation, and it allows minor voices and major voices alike to be heard. And more universally liked ideas are more likely to be implemented, and it makes it more likely for healthy coalitions. And a coalition is basically a group of people or parties that work together to get things done. Imagine that. Imagine a country where our political parties actually work together to get things done instead of creating divisiveness and hate. Now, if proportional representation is so great, well, then how come we haven't tried this in our country before? And the answer is we have, and it was a wild success. There were many cities back in the 20s, 30s, 40s that were implementing proportional representation to get seats filled on their city councils. They put an end to this, though, and it really came down to they didn't want black people to get elected, and black people started to get elected to these city councils. So the white supremacists of the day, they put an end to proportional representation for that reason. I kind of wonder if things had gone a little bit differently. I wonder if proportional representation would have been more widespread at this point in our nation. I wonder what it could have done to really help our situation. Proportional representation increases both freedom and equality. That's something that Americans deeply believe in, those kind of qualities. It raises freedom because we have more freedom to be represented in our country and to potentially not be taxed without representation. And it increases equality because it's not just the political elites, it's not just the rich people who can influence those who are already in power, who have the power. It gives the power to a more broad group of people. When the founders didn't get adequate representation, they took up arms and they fought to get it. And they got it. And luckily, we don't have to do that in this day and age. We all know that we can do much better than what we are at right now. We can form a system of proportional representation, and that would be so much better and give us so much more freedom than what our winner-takes-all system does for us right now. If we successfully implement a system of proportional representation, imagine the progress we could make in our country. Next time, we're going to be talking about the media and how we can use the media more effectively to create this kind of change. So I hope you can join in on that next episode. And you and I can be a part of the solution. Let's change the country's flat tire before it gets worse. Let's make sure that we can continue to move forward as a country. Thanks for joining me today here on Polar Opposites. It's been a privilege to have you here. Please share these ideas with family and friends. And by liking and subscribing and following this channel, you'll get more content like this. And just remember that when you learn better, to do better. We'll see you next time.